I never imagined my life would take me to a place so dark, a place so filled with despair, that would feel like every part of me was being swallowed whole. But that was where I found myself one evening, standing on the edge of everything I thought I knew. The weight of the world had pressed down on me for so long. I had almost forgotten what it felt like to breathe freely. The daily grind, the endless distractions, the constant search of fulfillment, none of it brought peace. It only deepened a void I could never quite escape. Years ago, I thought I had everything figured out. On the surface, everything appeared perfect. A good job, friends, things to distract me from the pain that simmered just below the surface. I had convinced myself that I could handle it all, that I could do it all alone. But the deeper I sank, the more I realized how empty I truly felt. The achievements, the people around me, none of it filled the growing emptiness inside. I had everything, yet I felt nothing. It wasn't long before the feelings of loneliness and frustration began to outweigh the temporary satisfactions I tried to fill myself with. The quiet moments became more unbearable. I turned to alcohol, to distractions, to anything that could drown out the overwhelming silence that kept pushing me deeper into darkness. But no matter how much I tried to escape, it was always there, lurking beneath the surface, a constant reminder that I was missing something essential. Then one night, I felt it, a pressure on my chest, like a weight that refused to lift. My breathing became labored, shallow, as if I was suffocating under the weight of everything I had been ignoring. I dismissed it at first, thinking it was just stress. After all, who wouldn't be stressed with everything going on? But this was different. Something inside me screamed for help, yet no one was around. My heart raced, my mind spun in confusion, and for the first time in years, I thought I might actually be losing control. As I lay there, caught in a battle I couldn't fight, I realized how desperate I'd become. I could no longer ignore the pain, the emptiness, the hunger that had nothing to do with food. There was a deeper hunger, a spiritual hunger that no amount of distractions could fill. It was then that I felt the strangest sensation, as though I was being pulled into something far beyond my understanding. The next few moments were a blur. Everything around me seemed to fade away as I struggled to breathe, to hold on to something, anything, that would give me peace. I felt myself slipping away, as though I was leaving my body. My surroundings grew dim, and then nothing. No sound, no light, no sense of time. Just a terrifying emptiness. I should have been afraid. I should have panicked. But instead, I felt an odd sense of calm, as though whatever was happening had already been set in motion, and all I could do was let go. Then, a voice, not a loud voice, but one I could hear clearly in the silence. It wasn't a voice that came from outside of me, but one that came from within, a voice that cut through the void and pierced the very core of my being. You are not ready. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a statement of judgment. It was a warning, a call to awaken. It was as though I had been given a glimpse into something so far beyond me, so deep, that I couldn't grasp it in that moment, but I felt it resonate in every part of my soul. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment my life would change forever. Before we move to the next chapter, I want to send a special message to those of you who have shared your name and city. If you want a chance to be featured in the next video and receive a personal message, simply comment your name, your city, and don't forget to hit that like button. I would love to recognize you in the next video and give you the opportunity to be seen by thousands of people. It's a small gesture, but I promise it will make a big impact. Join our community today by subscribing to the channel, and let's walk this journey together. Your support means the world to us, and I can't wait to continue the story with you. The days that followed felt like a blur, as though my mind was struggling to catch up with something I could neither understand nor fully process. I had been given a glimpse of something, a warning, a call, but I had no idea what to do with it. My life continued its downward spiral, each day heavier than the last. I went through the motions, but something inside me had shifted. It was like a door had been opened to a truth I couldn't yet grasp, and I couldn't stop thinking about the words I had heard. You are not ready. That haunting voice, so clear, so precise, echoed in the back of my mind. It wasn't just a message. It was a challenge that called into question everything I believed about myself, my life, and the path I had chosen. I tried to ignore it, I tried to continue living as I had before, but the cracks in my facade were growing wider. The distractions I had relied on no longer worked. I could no longer drown out the emptiness with alcohol, work, or the fleeting pleasures I once sought. The silence had grown louder, the hunger within me more pronounced. Then one day, as I sat in my apartment, feeling more isolated than ever before, something happened. I had reached the point where I couldn't pretend anymore. I could no longer deny the hunger inside me, the gnawing emptiness that could not be filled with the things I once believed would satisfy. It wasn't just physical hunger. It was a spiritual hunger, a longing I couldn't ignore any longer. I began to search for answers, diving into books, conversations, and even online forums, trying to find something, anything, that could explain this growing sense of unease. I explored different spiritual practices, from mindfulness to meditation, but nothing seemed to connect. Everything felt temporary, superficial. I was searching for something deeper, something that resonated with the very core of who I was. Then one night, while lying in bed, I had another vision. Or perhaps it was a dream, but it felt too real to be just that. In this vision, I saw myself standing at the edge of a vast, churning ocean. The waves crashed against the shore, threatening to pull me under with their intensity. I stood there, paralyzed, unable to move. I could feel the force of the water calling to me, urging me to surrender, to be swept away. But I didn't want to go. I didn't want to let go. And yet, there I stood, overwhelmed by a sense of inevitability. It was as if I knew that something had to change, something had to give. The world around me was in turmoil, but in the distance, I saw a faint light, a beacon shining through the darkness, a warmth that called to me. It wasn't just a light that drew me in, though. It was the peace that came with it, the stillness that promised to calm the storm inside me. The moment I reached for the light, I woke up. I sat up in bed, drenched in sweat, my heart racing. The vision, the ocean, the light, they were all so vivid, so real. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted within me. The hunger, the emptiness, it was still there, but now it felt different. It wasn't just a void to be filled. It was a path to be followed, a journey that required something more from me than I had ever given before. And that's when it hit me. The voice I had heard, the message that had haunted me, was not a random thought. It was a call to action, a call to prepare, to change, to fast. But I didn't understand what that meant. Not fully. Fast? What did that have to do with anything? Was it simply about skipping meals? How could that possibly help me find the peace I so desperately sought? I didn't know the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever I had been doing before wasn't working. If I wanted to find that peace, to escape the storm, I had to take a different path. I was ready to find out what fasting truly meant. The next few days felt like a blur, and yet every moment seemed to stretch endlessly in front of me. I was consumed with the idea of fasting. It was strange. In the past, I would have laughed at the thought. Giving up food to find peace? It seemed absurd. But now, it felt like the only option. The weight of my own desperation had led me to a place where I couldn't ignore the call anymore. I decided to start small, just one day. It was an experiment, a leap of faith. The first few hours were relatively easy. I had been so caught up in the busyness of life that the hunger hadn't even begun to register. But then, as the hours passed, something began to change. My body, accustomed to being fed at certain intervals, started to protest. The hunger became intense, almost unbearable. At first, I tried to push through it. I distracted myself, focusing on anything that might take my mind off the gnawing emptiness in my stomach. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more the hunger intensified. It wasn't just physical anymore. It became spiritual, emotional, and mental. Every part of me was screaming for release, for satisfaction, for peace. But there was none to be found. I sat down in silence, the world around me spinning in the overwhelming weight of my own discomfort. I had to face something I had been avoiding for years. The truth that nothing in this world could satisfy me. The food I craved, the distractions I chased, the endless attempts to fill the void, none of it was enough. The hunger I felt wasn't just for food. It was for something deeper. I could feel it now, more clearly than ever. As I sat there, the voice that had spoken to me before seemed to echo in my mind once more. You are not ready. This time, however, it wasn't a warning. It felt more like a reminder that I was on the right path, even if I couldn't fully understand it yet. It wasn't just about food. It was about surrender. It was about giving up everything I had been holding on to in exchange for something greater, something I couldn't see, but I knew was there. It was then that the true weight of fasting began to settle into my soul. It wasn't just about the discomfort. It wasn't about the deprivation. It was about emptying myself of all the distractions, all the things that had kept me from truly hearing the voice of God, from truly connecting with Him. The hunger was a symbol of something much deeper. I wasn't just starving my body. I was starving the parts of me that had been consumed with the world's desires, the parts of me that had turned away from the only thing that could fill the emptiness inside. As the hours dragged on, I began to feel something shift. It was subtle at first, like a small spark in the darkness. The hunger still gnawed at me, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like an opportunity. It felt like a chance to experience something I had been missing. A deep, unshakable peace that began to settle over me, even in the midst of my discomfort. I couldn't explain it, but it was real. I began to pray, not just for strength to endure the fast, but for something more, for understanding, for clarity, for a deeper connection to the divine. I opened my Bible and read words that seemed to jump off the page, words that spoke directly to my heart, words that confirmed the path I was on. Isaiah 58 verse 6 stood out to me. Is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free? I read those words over and over again, allowing them to sink deep into my soul. Fasting wasn't just about denying myself. It was about breaking free from my own desires, from the distractions that had kept me bound, and from the weight of the past that had held me captive for so long. I felt the chains breaking. As the day went on, I felt lighter. Not physically, but spiritually. The hunger in my stomach was still there, but it no longer dominated me. I was beginning to understand the true purpose of fasting. It wasn't about what I was giving up, but about what I was gaining. I was gaining clarity, peace, and a connection to something greater than myself. That night, I lay in bed, still hungry, but at peace. My thoughts were clear for first time in years, and I realized that the emptiness I felt before wasn't gone, but had transformed. It had become a space for God to fill. The voice that had once told me, "You are not ready," now seemed to say, "You are on the path. You are beginning to understand." I closed my eyes, a sense of peace flooding over me as I drifted into sleep, knowing that this was just a beginning. The days began to blur together as I pressed forward on this journey of fasting and prayer. Every moment felt like a battle between the old and the new, between the life I had known and the transformation that was slowly unfolding within me. Each day brought its own challenges, its own temptations, and its own lessons. It was as though I was being stripped of everything I had held on to, every comfort I had clung to, in order to make room for something greater. The physical hunger was nothing compared to what I was beginning to feel within. As I continued to fast, the spiritual hunger intensified. It wasn't just a hunger for food. It was a hunger for understanding, for peace, for connection to the divine. And yet, the more I sought, the more I realized how much I had neglected in my past. The distractions, the sins, the unresolved pain, they all came rushing back, confronting me in ways I hadn't anticipated. I began to see the depth of the wounds I had buried for so long. The anger, the regret, the bitterness, they were all there, lurking beneath the surface, waiting to be dealt with. As I continued to pray, I began to feel the weight of these emotions more acutely. It was as though every moment of my past was rising to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged, demanding to be healed. At times, the battle felt overwhelming. The old habits, the old ways of thinking, were so deeply ingrained in me that they felt impossible to shake. But each time I stumbled, I was reminded of the peace I had found in my moments of surrender. Each time I felt the weight of my past bearing down on me, I remembered the light I had seen in the distance, the peace that had called to me. It was there, just beyond the struggle, waiting for me to reach out and take hold of it. In these moments of despair, when I felt like I might fall back into my old ways, I turned to prayer. I prayed not for strength, but for guidance. I didn't want to keep fighting alone. I needed something greater than myself to help me through this. I needed God's presence to carry me when I couldn't go on. And in those quiet moments, I began to hear him again, not in loud, thunderous words, but in the still, small voice that had first called to me. His voice was soft, yet unwavering, as though it was always there, waiting for me to listen. "You are not alone," it whispered. "I am with you, even now. Keep going. I have not left you." With each prayer, I felt the chains of my past begin to loosen. The heavy burdens that had weighed me down for so long began to lift. It wasn't instant transformation, but a gradual release, a process that was slowly changing me from the inside out. And then one night, as I sat in prayer, I felt a shift within me. It was as though a wall had been broken, and for the first time in my life, I could truly hear God's voice. It wasn't just in my mind, but in my soul. His presence was overwhelming, filling every part of me. It was a peace that surpassed all understanding, a peace that washed over me and filled me with a sense of belonging I had never known before. In that moment, I realized that I had been running from myself for so long. I had been running from the pain, from the darkness, from the parts of me I didn't want to face. But now, as I stood in the light of God's presence, I could finally see who I was meant to be. I wasn't defined by my past, by my mistakes, or by my fears. I was defined by him. The hunger, the pain, the struggle, it was all part of the process. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And as I surrendered more and more to God's will, I began to see the beauty in the struggle. I began to understand that every moment of discomfort, every moment of weakness, was an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for transformation. I wasn't the same person I had been before. And with each passing day, I was becoming more and more the person I was meant to be. A person of faith, a person of strength, a person of purpose. But even in this newfound peace, I knew the journey was far from over. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, and the battle within would continue. But now, I knew I wasn't walking alone. I had the strength of God with me, and that was all I needed to keep moving forward. Before we continue to the next chapter, I'd love to hear from you. Comment below with your name and the city you're watching from. I'd be so happy to send you a special greeting in the next video. It's a wonderful way to connect with this community and be recognized by others walking this path. Don't forget to leave a like. Your support means the world to me and to everyone here. Let's continue this journey together. And remember, your presence here is a part of this amazing transformation. The days continue to stretch on, each one marked by new revelations, new battles, and new moments of grace. I was beginning to understand that this journey I had embarked on was not just about fasting. It was about surrender. It was about giving up my own will, my own desires, and allowing God to take control. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was one of the hardest things I had ever done. But every step I took felt like one step closer to the person I was meant to be. As I continued to pray and fast, I encountered a new challenge that tested my faith in ways I had never imagined. The more I sought God, the more I seemed to face resistance. It was as though the enemy, aware of the transformation taking place within me, had begun to attack in full force. The distractions, the temptations, and the doubts that I thought I had conquered began to resurface. It was as though every part of my past, every mistake, every fear was being thrown in my face once again. At first, I struggled to understand why this was happening. I had been doing everything right, or so I thought. I had been praying, fasting, seeking God's presence. So why was everything around me falling apart? My mind was clouded with doubt, and my heart began to feel heavy again. I was beginning to question whether this transformation was even possible, or if I had simply been fooling myself all along. It was during one of these moments of doubt that I remembered something crucial. I remembered that faith is not just about trusting when things are easy, when everything is going well. True faith is about trusting when everything falls apart, when the world around you seems to crumble. It's about standing firm in the belief that God is with you, even when you don't see him, even when you don't feel him. I opened my Bible and read the words of James 1 verses 2 to 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. These words hit me like a lightning bolt. The trials, the struggles, the battles, they weren't punishments. They were tests of my faith, tests that would shape me, strengthen me, and prepare me for the life God had called me to. The resistance wasn't a sign of failure. It was a sign of progress. God was using these trials to refine me, to purify me, and to teach me to rely fully on Him. As I read those words, a sense of peace washed over me. It didn't make the struggle easier, but it gave me the strength to face it. I realized that the pain I was experiencing was not in vain. It was shaping me into something better, something stronger, something more capable of fulfilling the purpose God had set for me. The next few days were difficult, but I faced them with a renewed sense of strength. Each time the enemy tried to pull me back into my old ways, I clung to the promises I'd found in God's Word. Every time the doubts crept in, I reminded myself of the truth I had discovered, that God was with me, that He was faithful, and that He was working in me even when I couldn't see it. The battle wasn't over, but I was beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I could feel the transformation happening within me. It was slow, but it was real. I was becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone more in tune with the will of God. In the midst of the struggle, I began to feel the presence of God more deeply than ever before. It was as though the more I surrendered, the more He filled me. The hunger, the emptiness, the longing, they were all being replaced by a peace that could only come from Him. The chains that had bound me were slowly but surely breaking free. I knew that there would still be challenges ahead. I knew that I would continue to face resistance and doubt. But I also knew that I wasn't alone. I had God by my side, and with His strength, I could face whatever came my way. As the days turned into weeks, the pressure to change intensified. It was no longer just a question of whether I would continue on this journey of fasting and transformation, but whether I could endure the challenges that lay ahead. I had come so far, yet I still felt so far from the person I wanted to be, the person I knew I was meant to become. It was as though I was standing on the edge of something great, but the final step seemed impossible to take. In the depths of my struggles, I began to realize something crucial. True transformation requires breaking. The person I had been, the person I thought I was, had to be broken down in order to rebuild something stronger, something more aligned with God's purpose. This breaking point was not an easy place to be. It was painful. It was uncomfortable. But I knew that it was necessary. There were days when I felt like giving up, when the weight of the journey felt too much to bear. The hunger, the cravings, the spiritual battles, they were exhausting. I wanted to go back to the comfort of my old life. The life I knew, the life that had never truly satisfied me, but at least felt familiar. But deep down, I knew that returning to that life would only keep me trapped in the same cycle of emptiness and frustration. In my moments of doubt, I turned to prayer. I asked God for strength, for clarity, for guidance. I needed to understand why I was facing such resistance. Why did it have to be so hard? And in those moments of vulnerability, I began to hear the still, small voice of God speaking to me again. "You are being refined," He whispered. "This pain is the fire that will purify you. Trust the process." I had heard these words before, but now they took on new meaning. The pain, the struggle, the breaking, it wasn't just punishment. It was part of the process of refinement. I wasn't being abandoned. I was being prepared for something greater. The suffering I felt wasn't meant to destroy me. It was meant to shape me, to strengthen me, and to make me more like the person I was meant to be. As I embraced this new perspective, I began to let go of my resistance. I surrendered to the process, knowing that every painful step forward was bringing me closer to the person God had called me to be. The breaking was not the end. It was the beginning of something beautiful. In those moments of surrender, I began to feel the presence of God in a way I had never experienced before. It was as though the walls around my heart were crumbling, and His love and peace were flooding in. The chains that had once bound me, the fears, the doubts, the regrets, were falling away. I could feel myself becoming lighter, freer, more alive. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of struggle, moments when I doubted myself, moments when I wanted to turn back. But now, I had a new understanding of the journey. I knew that the breaking was part of the healing, and I was ready to let go of the old in order to make room for the new. As I continued to pray and fast, I began to see glimpses of the person I was becoming. The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was real. I could feel it in my spirit, in my soul. I was being made new, and even though the journey was far from over, I knew that I was on the right path. I was being refined, purified, and transformed one step at a time. And with each step, I grew closer to the person I was meant to be. Before we move on to the next chapter, I'd love to invite you to join our community. If you're enjoying this journey, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It really helps us continue creating these videos, and I want you to know that your support means so much to us. We don't make any money from this. We do it because we're passionate about sharing this message with you. So, if you feel moved, subscribing and liking would be a huge help in spreading this journey to others. Let's continue to grow together as a community, supporting one another through every step of this transformation. Thank you for being here. The transformation was far from over, but something deep within me had shifted. I could feel it with every step I took. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, truly living. The chains that had once bound me, the fears, the doubts, and the shame, they were all falling away, piece by piece. I was free, free from the past, free from the things that had held me captive for so long. And as I looked forward, I saw a future filled with possibility, hope, and purpose. But even as I embraced this new life, I knew that there would still be battles ahead. There would still be moments of doubt, moments when the old temptations would resurface, trying to pull me back into the darkness. But now, I had a new strength, a new foundation. I had been broken and rebuilt, refined in the fire, and I knew that I was stronger than ever before. In the quiet moments, I could feel the presence of God with me in a way I had never experienced before. It wasn't just that He was with me in the easy times. He was with me in the struggles, in the pain, in the moments when I felt weakest. And that was where I found my true strength, not in myself, but in Him. He had been with me all along, and now I could see His hand in everything, every step, every challenge, every victory. It was all part of His plan for me. As I continued to walk this path of faith, I knew that I wasn't alone. I was part of something bigger, a community of believers who were all on their own journeys of transformation. And together, we would continue to grow, to learn, and to support each other. But the road ahead was still uncertain. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that with God by my side, I could face anything. I had learned that true peace, true freedom, didn't come from escaping the struggles of life, but from trusting in God through them. It was in the midst of the trials, the storms, that I had found my true strength. And now, I was ready to face whatever came next. The person I had been, the person who had been lost, broken, and searching, was gone, and in his place stood someone new, someone who had been healed, restored, and given a purpose. I was no longer trapped by my past, but empowered by my future. And as I looked ahead, I knew that this was only the beginning. The journey had just begun. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. I hope this story has touched your heart, and if it has, I want to invite you to continue watching. The next video will be just as revelatory and will bring even more insight into your own life. Simply click on the video that's appearing on the screen to continue your journey of transformation. Before you go, don't forget to leave a like and comment, amen below. This is your moment to affirm that you are ready to continue being blessed and growing in faith. Let's keep this momentum going together. I'm so grateful you're here, and I can't wait to see what comes next for all of us.